Nebbia is a revolutionary showerhead that saves you money by using 45% less water, but with a stream of water that's way more powerful than what you get with other showerheads. To get 15% off, go to nebbia.com/Pakman and use the code Pakman. We have one of those big if true type of announcements. Yesterday, President Joe Biden announced that there will be enough vaccine supply for every adult in the United States to get a coronavirus vaccine by the end of May. Now, there will be enough supply and we will have the resources to inject every dose, or two different things. But we'll talk about that. Let's look at the announcement from Joe Biden made yesterday afternoon.
We're now on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May. Let me say that again. When we came into office, the prior administration had contracted for not nearly enough vaccine to cover adults in America. We rectified that. About 3 weeks ago, we were able to say that we'll have enough vaccine supply for adults by the end of July. And I'm pleased to announce today, as a consequence of the stepped-up process that I've ordered and just outlined, this country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May. By the end of May. That's progress, important progress. But it's not enough to have the vaccine supply. We need vaccinators, people to put the shots in people's arms.
So, what exactly does this mean? There will be enough vaccine doses for every adult to get vaccinated. Is this possible? Is it an overpromise? There's a number of different considerations here, and let's just kind of think it through. Apply the sniff test to it. First of all, remember that right now, every American is mostly every adult. Two of the vaccines are for 18 plus, currently authorized for 18 years of age and older individuals. The other is for 16 plus. So roughly, when we say every American, right now we mean every eligible American, which is somewhere between 260 and 266. Let's call it 265 million people if we start with those eligible age-wise for the vaccine. So we're starting with 265. Then we look at, as of today, March 3rd, what is the number of people who are vaccinated. In other words, we start with the 265. How many are all set and we can remove from that? Well, 26 million people got both doses. So that drops us from 265 to 239 million eligible Americans left to vaccinate. Of the 239 million that are left, an additional 25 and a half, call it 26 million, have one dose from the vaccines that need two doses. So we need to get those 26 million people to 100% vaccination. We need another 26 million doses. So then we will have 213 million people left to vaccinate in the remainder of March, April, and May. 213 million people in what is roughly 89 days. That's a big stretch, but there's more considerations here. Joe Biden is saying not that we will vaccinate every eligible American by the end of May. He's saying we will have enough vaccines by the end of May, and it could take time from vaccine availability to actual injection. So that's one aspect of this. We also have to probably take off the top that right now, about 25% of adults don't want the vaccine. That's the latest number. It's been declining over time. More and more people want the vaccine over time. But in reality, it's not really 213 million people left to vaccinate. It's more like 198 million when you account for those who, as of right now, say that they don't want it. So the question becomes, will there be doses for 198 million people to be vaccinated by the end of May, even if it takes them a little longer to get vaccinated? In theory, yes, it's not crazy to think that that's a number that's going to be available. Moderna and Pfizer continue to say they will deliver enough together to cover 200 million Americans by the end of May. That would be 400 million doses, but that includes December, January, February. It includes what they've already done. And then Johnson & Johnson, the recently approved third vaccine, which is a one-dose vaccine, they had contracted to deliver 87 million vaccines by the end of May. Remember, with being one dose, 87 million vaccines is enough for 87 million people, but It looks like J&J is going to fall short, but there's some breathing room. Even if Johnson & Johnson does only a part of the 87 million they contracted to do, it's quite plausible that you will have enough vaccines for every eligible American who wants a vaccine by the end of May. As I said earlier this week, every indication, if you look at both what the Biden administration is claiming and what the pharmaceutical companies are claiming, every indication is that the challenge as we get into April, and certainly it may even start to be a challenge in March, certainly by the end of April and definitively by May, the challenge will be, do we have enough infrastructure to put the vaccines into arms? Because the amount of new doses we're going to have in the next 80 days, even in the next 40 days, is well beyond what we currently are able to inject. We're going to need more vaccination sites, which are being launched. We're going to need more vaccinators who are being hired. And we may be needing to run some of these larger vaccination sites 24/7 to make this happen. Having enough vaccines by May 31st is great. If you can't actually inject them for 4 months, then it's sort of like, well, it's actually going to be 4 more months. Now, one important thing to know, and this may increase the number of people that want the vaccine, the CDC is expected to announce tomorrow, Thursday, March 4th, that it's okay. They're going to give a go-ahead for vaccinated people to gather indoors in small groups without masks. This may encourage more people to want the vaccine, and it may lower the vaccine hesitancy. Remember, at one point, 60% didn't want the vaccine. That was down to 50, 40, 33. Now it's down to about 25. The CDC saying, hey, we've determined these vaccines are effective enough that vaccinated people, groups of exclusively vaccinated people, small groups indoors without masks are okay. That will likely encourage more people to say, I want the vaccine. Now, at the same time, the counter would be, if you care what the CDC says, you probably already want the vaccine. You're already in the group of people that want it. So maybe it won't make that big of a difference. I don't know if the CDC is going to convince too many anti-vaxxers that at this late stage still don't want the vaccine, but it's something. People who have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 will be cleared to gather in small groups without masks. Dr. Anthony Fauci said yesterday, quote, I use the example of a daughter coming in from out of town who is doubly vaccinated and a husband and wife doubly vaccinated and maybe a next door neighbor who you know are doubly vaccinated. Small gatherings in the home of people, I think you can clearly feel that the relative risk is so low that you would not have to wear a mask, that you could have a good social gathering within the home. That is very good news. That is very optimistic news, and I find it completely reasonable. Now, it goes without saying that if this new vaccine timeline is accurate, we are, again, I want to be realistically optimistic based on what we're being told. We are looking at a potentially very good summer, all else being equal, assuming we don't have significant variant escape from the vaccines and all of the things that we're watching. We're potentially looking at a pretty solid summer, and we will continue to cover it. The United States has now fully vaccinated about 8% of the population. Texas has fully vaccinated just under 7% of the population. So, of course, Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott has decided open everything, wide open, end the mask mandates, and let her rip, to quote Anthony Fauci from last year. Governor Abbott tweeting about this yesterday saying, quote, I just announced Texas is open 100%, everything. I also ended the statewide mask mandate. He, at the briefing, made this announcement much the same way. To applause, take a look at this.
So today, I'm issuing a new executive order that rescinds most of the earlier executive orders. Effective next Wednesday, all businesses of any type are allowed to open 100%. That includes any type of entity in Texas. Also, I am ending the statewide mask mandate.
Now, did federal health officials suggest this be done? No, they did not. Federal health officials said the opposite. They said, do not ease restrictions quite yet. Not enough people are vaccinated. The case reductions are sort of leveling off. This is not the time to do that. But Greg Abbott doesn't care. And maybe, at this point, maybe return to smoking in restaurants as well, right? If the argument here is freedom from Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Now, I have a few thoughts on this. Big picture, this is completely and incredibly premature. It's completely irresponsible. It makes no sense to do. That being said, one element of this is I wonder how much it will actually change people's behavior in Texas, because all along you had lots of people in Texas ignoring the guidelines, and the people who were paying attention to the CDC and Fauci and the White House are probably not going to change what they're doing because of Greg Abbott's announcement. So there is a real question as to how much this will actually change in Texas. It will change some things. I wonder how much. That being said, I can understand and sympathize with the urgency of getting businesses open for the sake of business, or at least wanting to. The mask mandate seems like just utter virtue signaling to the anti-mask crowd. Wearing a mask is so easy. You could open the businesses fully, but keep the mask mandate and make it all safer. So the mask mandate ending seems to me far more political than it is even economic, but it is Texas, and that's clearly a big part of what they're doing. The next question is whether this is destined to backfire. What I mean by that is it too early? Of course it is. Is it against the medical recommendations? Is it against public health recommendations, what Texas is doing? Of course. Are enough people vaccinated where there's a mathematical case to be made for doing this? No chance in hell. But Texas has the benefit of it being warm in much of the state. We know about the storms. Warm in much of the state. Getting warmer as we approach spring, just 3 weeks away. The virus is generally speaking on a downturn, and vaccinations are increasing. So as boneheaded as this decision is by Governor Greg Abbott, there's a chance that they may merely by odds get away with this without as big of a disaster as we might imagine, assuming that vaccination continues. And of course, the people most at risk who understand the virus are probably going to keep being safe anyway. So the case increases that this will likely lead to in Texas probably are going to come mostly from younger people who behave less safely and will be vaccinated later. But that might not be affecting hospitalizations too much, since young people are unlikely to end up in the hospital if they get sick. Now, some will. Some old folks will get sick and die because of this. Some random young people will too. But overall, Texas has 29 million people. Statistically, this is an irresponsibly early decision to be making, but they might by chance get away with it without as big a disaster as this would have been if they had done it, for example, in October of 2020. This is the governor making it official. Remember that the mask mandate wasn't enforced in many parts of Texas anyway. People were already dining indoors. So it's quite possible that in some general sense, Greg Abbott is going to be able to come out of this vindicated, and I use that term very loosely, thanks to the fact that a lot of the guidelines, the numbers in Texas already reflect a lot of guidelines being ignored anyway, and vaccination and warmer weather is only going to help. That being said, doing this right before spring break, there's going to be some chaos, and other states clearly are starting to go in this direction. Mississippi announcing yesterday, almost at the exact same time, they are lifting business capacity limits. They are lifting their mask mandate. And I predict there will be more states to come. It strikes me as premature. It seems to me the more cautiously optimistic timeline would be, let's go really hard the next 60 to 90 days on vaccination. And we could have, for many aspects of the population in much of the country, a close to normal summer. Maybe a lot of states doing this will prevent us from having that. I don't know. But that's the news out of Texas. Let me know if you live in Texas. Will you change your behavior as a result of this? You can find me on Twitter at @DPakman.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
One of our sponsors today is Nebbia, the creator of the world's most innovative shower head. It uses only about half the water that other shower heads do, saving you money, helping the environment, but it's actually a lot more powerful than other shower heads on the market. It has twice the coverage of other shower heads. The water sprays with a ton of pressure. I've been using it in my bathroom at home. I love it. Only took a few minutes to set up, really easy, and it's been a totally different experience than any other shower head I've used. I can get in and out of the shower way quicker now because of how powerful it is. It only takes a few seconds to get completely rinsed off. So I was actually amazed that it's only using about half as much water. Nebbia also offers a number of shower accessories like shelves and curtains, which match perfectly with the design of the shower head. The shower head starts at just $199, but the first 100 people to go to nebbia.com/Pakman and use code Pakman will get 15% off all Nebbia products.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The David Pakman Show is a viewer and listener supported program. You can support the work we do and get not only access to commercial-free audio and video feeds of the show, but also access to the daily members-only bonus show by signing up at joinpakman.com. All right, this is not like a huge win where we would throw a party and cheer, but we actually got some good news, which is that Joe Biden's budget nominee to run the Office of Management and Budget, Neera Tanden, has had to withdraw her nomination because of opposition. Now, from the beginning, I said, as we evaluated Joe Biden's selections for all sorts of different cabinet and other positions, Neera Tanden is a bad pick. Neera Tanden was Joe Biden's worst pick, I argued. And Joe Biden selected Neera Tanden to run the Office of Management and Budget. It was pretty clear early on that there would be opposition, not just from many Republicans, but possibly even from some Democrats. And indeed, that opposition from both Democratic and Republican senators made it clear that she was unlikely to be able to get confirmed. Now, the reason, let me see how I want to say this. Although it's good that she's not going to go forward and get confirmed, the reason why most of the Republican and some of the Democratic opposition didn't like her is kind of a BS reason. And it's her controversial tweets in which she attacked all sorts of different people. She's attacked in tweets everybody from Bernie Sanders to many Republicans and others. For me, the reason Neera Tanden was a bad pick was because as someone affiliated with the Center for American Progress, think about all the things she didn't represent. Neera Tanden didn't represent progressivism. Neera Tanden didn't represent independence from the most corporate and establishment interests within the Democratic Party. She represented all of the worst of Democratic Party politics, an establishment, centrist-leaning, kowtowing to the money sort of individual who you were going to put in charge of the budget. That was the source of my opposition. I didn't care that Neera Tanden had said mean things about Bernie. I didn't care about Neera Tanden's other tweets. The reason why so many Republicans and even some Democrats like Joe Manchin said that they don't like Neera Tanden for this position was mostly related to tweets where all sorts of different people who clearly didn't actually have any idea what Neera Tanden was tweeting all along decided to grandstand on the basis of, oh, look at this tweet that Neera Tanden sent. Look at that tweet that Neera Tanden sent. And ultimately, it became clear that Neera Tanden didn't have the votes. Joe Manchin, an important centrist swing vote among Democrats in the Senate, said that her, quote, overtly partisan statements would have a toxic and detrimental impact on working relationships between Congress and the Office of Management and Budget. Maine Republican Susan Collins also says that her, quote, past actions demonstrated the kind of animosity Biden has pledged to transcend. And it became clear that they weren't going to have the votes for her. So this is, in a sense, funny because on day one, I mean, go back to my clip. The day after Neera Tanden was nominated, I said, not only do I think this is a bad nomination, it's not clear to me she can get confirmed because I believe there will be opposition from Republicans and Democrats. That's exactly what happened. It was predictable. So it's not a huge win, but it's a win in the sense that this was Biden's worst nominee and she's not going to be in the position. And that's a good thing. The next question becomes who replaces Tanden. The front runner is believed to be Shalonda Young, a former staff director for the House Appropriations Committee. She's been actively pushed by members of the Congressional Black Caucus, believed to be the replacement pick. I don't know much about Shalonda Young. We will learn about Shalonda Young if indeed she is the nominee by the time you listen to today's show. Maybe she will already have been made the nominee. But as I said before, this is not, I don't know where this rank. Like, if you said Biden could have done COVID relief 10 days in and Neera Tanden would be director of the Office of Management and Budget, I might have said that's a fair trade. It would have been like, Neera Tanden's bad, but I might have traded it if you got me COVID relief really soon. And now we're still waiting on COVID relief and it's March. It's a win. It's just not feeling like this is now the progressive takeover of the Biden presidency. But I think if you want to find something positive in this, it would be that we can, as people to the left of Biden, have an impact on the Biden presidency. Although, again, the reason that this nomination tanked is partially because Republicans didn't like her mean tweets, which is not exactly a progressive perspective. But that is what it is. Neera Tanden not moving forward, and that I can be very glad about. We have now learned that Donald and Melania Trump received their COVID vaccines at the White House in January, but kept it secret. I will talk a little bit about why it's believed that they kept it secret. But unfortunately, I think there is no way to deny that Donald and Melania Trump keeping their COVID vaccinations secret for months led to some deaths that could have been prevented. And I'll explain why momentarily. CNN reporting that Trump and Melania received the COVID-19 vaccine in January. This is per a Trump advisor talking to CNN. It wasn't clear which of the vaccines they received. It wasn't clear how many doses they received. And this was something that the question of this came up, and it came up on my stream on Sunday as we were covering Donald Trump's CPAC speech. Donald Trump said everybody should get the vaccine. And of course, his goal in saying that was a political goal in taking credit for the vaccine, saying, hey, I got us the vaccine. Everybody should get it. This immediately raised the question, as Donald Trump told the audience, the vaccine is very unpainful. Unusual choice of terms, but it's Trump. OK. It raised the question, did Trump get the vaccine? We know Joe Biden did. Trump even mentioned it, saying my work on vaccines got Joe a vaccine. And the question became, did Trump get the vaccine? In December, the White House said Trump wasn't going to be given a vaccine until it was recommended by the White House medical team, and that Trump was still receiving the benefits of that antibody treatment he got when he had COVID-19, and that was that. We've now learned that Trump accepted the vaccine while still president at the White House in January. No public fanfare, no public announcement. And now the question is, could lives have been saved if it had been publicly known that Trump had been vaccinated? I believe that the answer is yes. We won't ever know how many, and we won't ever be able to point to who. But one of the most vaccine hesitant groups in the country is Republicans. We previously spoke about how folks without college degrees, Black folks, and Republicans are the three most anti-COVID vaccine groups in the country for different reasons. Republicans have much of their opposition or lack of interest in the COVID vaccine based in the constant disinformation that came from Donald Trump's White House, that this isn't that serious and that we can get back to normal without a vaccine, and so on and so forth. So there's no doubt that there are, can we say thousands? Could we say tens of thousands of Republicans who did not get vaccinated? Had they known Trump had been vaccinated in January, many of them would have gotten a vaccine. And simply statistically speaking, some of them got COVID and died because they didn't get the vaccine, and they would have had they known Trump had gotten it and was saying in January, everybody should get it, instead of waiting until February 28th to say everybody should get it. We won't know exactly how many. We won't know exactly who, but there is no question that this is the latest action by Donald Trump that caused some deaths that could have been prevented. We now have a study which suggests 40% of the COVID deaths during the Trump presidency were due to bad policy. Of course, we were going to have many deaths. This ravaged just about every country in the world. But 40% of them were because of bad management by the federal government and by state governments as well. and certainly Trump keeping his vaccine a secret for months only made that even worse. We will have more coverage of this on the David Pakman Show Instagram. Find us there at David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The number one funding source for the David Pakman Show has been and continues to be membership. And membership is not just a feel-good thing. You get access to the world-famous bonus show every single day just for members, as well as commercial-free audio and video feeds of the show day in and day out. You can sign up for membership very, very quickly at joinpakman.com. That's joinpakman.com. If the normal prices strike you as high, by all means, use the coupon code BETTER21, all one word, all lowercase. Become a member today.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
The new battle lines in the culture war, at least for the last 48 hours, have become Dr. Seuss. Now, I'm going to play a bunch of clips for you if you haven't been following the latest fake scandal. It is indeed Dr. Seuss, the children's author. Republicans are claiming that Dr. Seuss has been banned, canceled, in particular by a Virginia school district. Now, first of all, the story is all based on a claim that's not true. Read Across America Day is a day of reading children's books. Historically, it had lots of Dr. Seuss material. In 2017, this changed to be more diverse. In 2019, a study looked at Dr. Seuss's books and found that characters of color are very underrepresented. They make up only 2% of the human characters, and that almost all of those representations of minority characters play on stereotypical tropes and portrayals, in particular of Asians. And that's true. There's no question about that whatsoever. Of course, Dr. Seuss books written in a different era, but there is no denying that that is absolutely the case. So the Virginia school district, they didn't ban Dr. Seuss. They didn't burn any books. They did decide not to connect Read Across America Day to Dr. Seuss specifically. Now, some people were happy. Some people were not. But Dr. Seuss wasn't banned. Dr. Seuss wasn't canceled. This is now the issue to the right in fighting this cancel culture war that is totally trumped up and fabricated. And they are getting an insane amount of mileage from it. Yesterday, this is just a few hours on Fox News. Okay. Think about everything that's been going on in the world in the last 24 hours and look at how much the story was Dr. Seuss on Fox News. Here is Congressman Jason Chaffetz appearing on Fox to express outrage.
Jason, where do you come down? Give us 30 seconds.
Well, I haven't gotten past the assassination of Mr. Potato Head. That one I still haven't gotten past, and now they're trying to take out Dr. Seuss. Come on, John. These are the icons I grew up with.
Yes, Fox ran a major segment during this hour called Cancel Culture Comes for Dr. Seuss. A Fox News reporter asked Biden Press Secretary Jen Psaki about Dr. Seuss.
Kristen, do you have another question?
A question about Dr. Seuss, since it's maybe the only day that you can bring up Dr. Seuss in every hearing. It is National Read Across America Day. It's also Dr. Seuss's birthday. Mm-hmm. Both former presidents, Obama and Trump, mentioned Dr. Seuss in their Read Across America Day proclamations, but President Biden did not. Why not?
Fox News characterized this portion of the press briefing to stir up even more controversy by captioning it, quote, Biden White House dodges question on Dr. Seuss. Later in the day, Fox News tried to stir up more controversy by pointing out that Barack Obama once praised Dr. Seuss.
Let me just quote Barack Obama in 2015 saying, quote, pretty much all the stuff you need to know is in Dr. Seuss. Now, is Barack Obama racist for quoting Dr. Seuss there and patting him on the back for the work that he did?
Can I add
I don't think so.
One other angle to this? There are so many kids right now who are falling behind in their reading because of this pandemic.
And it's a great place to start,
and they're
Dr.
not
Seuss.
in the classroom. And Dr. Seuss, this company could be just spreading that message, educate our children, encourage literacy. Interesting stuff. David.
It's good enough for Barack Obama. It's good enough for me and the rest of America, I think.
Then they do another segment on Dr. Seuss referring to the demand of Congressman Jim Jordan to do congressional hearings on cancel culture vis-a-vis Dr. Seuss.
Roberts is also with us as well. And John, from the political state, this has gotten political, right? Because Jim Jordan has now stepped in. He's saying that there's a dangerous trend happening with cancel culture in this country. He's now calling on Congress to examine this cancel culture that he says is sweeping America.
You know, everything is political these days, whether it's woke culture, whether it's cancel culture, whether it's extreme on either side here. But
in the morning yesterday, they had reporter or anchor, or I don't know what role she is, Carly Shimkus, reporting that 6 Dr. Seuss books will no longer be published and have been canceled. Now, it is true, but it's Dr. Seuss Enterprises that decided for itself that as a business decision, these 6 books contain hurtful, stereotypical portrayals of people. So they decided for themselves they're not going to publish them anymore. That's called free market capitalism. People can complain or praise a company, and a company can listen to or ignore those complaints, but that's free market capitalism. Newsmax, by the way, it's not just Fox. Newsmax also jumping in on the action. They ran a segment called Cancel Culture's Next Target, Dr. Seuss. And then over on Fox Business, Stuart Varney running a defiant and principle segment simply called Dr. Seuss Canceled. And then lastly for us, I could go on all day. They went on into the night. This morning, they were back on Dr. Seuss. But lastly for us, Madison Cawthorn, the Trumpian Republican congressman recently accused by oodles of women of sexual assault. He went on Fox News yesterday, not asked about the endless sexual assault allegations against him, but instead asked about Dr. Seuss. And here is what he said.
I'm fired up about this. I don't know if you are, but my guess is if you had a childhood and you read Dr. Seuss, you might be. President Biden canceling Dr. Seuss in a Read Across America proclamation. This after Loudoun County schools there in Virginia said his books are filled with, quote, Orientalism, anti-blackness, and white supremacy. Look, Congressman, these cancellations getting more and more outlandish by the day. When does this stop?
Well, brother, I was going to go to the gym after this hit, but I don't have to now. I'm already fired up. That is absurd. Inside of our Congress, we actually have done a lot. We've got a lot accomplished. We have successfully, so far, renamed a post office here in the 117th Congress. So you're telling me that the actual priorities of the Democrats is renaming a post office and now canceling Dr. Seuss? Americans are actually struggling.
They're really tired of this, but they won't stop covering it all day, day in and day out. It continued into the afternoon, into the evening during the 5 p.m. show on Fox called The Five. The headline story was 6 Dr. Seuss books pulled over offensive images. And what this is simply what was going. We discussed it yesterday in detail. Some people weren't happy with my analysis, but many people were and appreciated it. They are losing on every issue. Americans think income inequality is a problem that should be dealt with. Americans are more in favor of abortion being legal in most cases than ever before. Most Americans think we should do COVID stimulus and do it the way that Joe Biden and Democrats have proposed. Most Americans believe gay marriage should be legal. I'm kind of hopping around economic and cultural issues here. Most Americans believe that there should be mask wearing for the time being. Like, I can go on, but Republicans are statistically on the wrong side of every issue. So it's Dr. Seuss all day and Andrew Cuomo if they want to do something that's marginally more substantive in the way that they cover it. And there is an Andrew Cuomo story and we covered it. And that's not the argument, but that is what is happening on Fox News at this point. I could have played 10 more clips from yesterday. I could have played 5 from today. They will not stop with this issue. And then soon they'll move on to, maybe back to Joe Biden and Jill Biden's relationship is fake. That was 10 days ago. They found a new shiny object now, Dr. Seuss. Question for you. Do you want me to keep engaging with this false idea of rampant cancel culture? Or would you prefer I even start ignoring it as a critique of what the right is doing? Open to hearing from you. Some viewers sent me this clip yesterday, and I want to look at it with you today. Evangelical end times televangelist, pastor, preacher Rick Wiles did a commentary a few days ago where he sort of sounded almost kind of like maybe a populist leftist, certainly a populist, maybe even a populist leftist who wants to take money from billionaires to help the poor. And some in our audience actually got suckered into it initially. But if you actually listen to what Rick Wiles is saying and you understand the context of his evangelical Christian worldview, you realize he's merely being a conspiracy theorist, and a nutty one at that. It's plain old-fashioned evangelical end times conspiracy theorism, which sometimes can sound like it's left-wing populism, but it's not. Now, before we get into the clip, as a reminder, we've talked about Rick Wiles before. He's one of the guys who during the Trump administration was talking about a civil war and taking up arms. He's the guy that said the impeachment of Donald Trump is an attempted Jew coup. He said if Donald Trump is removed, there will be violence. I guess he was right about that. The violence was from people on his side. He said vegan burgers are a satanic plot to destroy souls. That's the Rick Wiles I'm talking about. So let's get into this clip. And you might notice he starts sounding sort of kind of like a left-wing guy here. Take a listen.
If somebody in America put together a political movement to do two main things: break up the power of the tech companies. I mean, bust them up. Don't just slap their fingers. Bust them up. Break them up.
Like in the monopolies of the early 1900s.
Yes, I mean, crush the tech companies, break them up, and to outlaw being billionaires.
Okay, he says, let's break up tech companies. Let's do antitrust enforcement. That's often a left-wing issue, except when they only care about breaking up tech monopolies and ignored the issue of antitrust for decades. And then he said outlaw being a billionaire. That's something many people on the left have talked about. So far, right-wing televangelist Rick Wiles is maybe appealing to some folks in our audience, but let's continue.
We've reached a point. I mean, I'm a free enterprise person, and I have no ill will towards anybody in their financial success. Hey, you want to be a zillionaire, a quadrillionaire? I don't care. All right. You want to go buy a planet? Go buy a planet. I don't care. But when you use your money and power to change my life, to take away my rights, to try to force things on me that I object to, that I find morally repulsive, when you try to restrict my free speech, when you try to promote population control, you want to pump vaccines into my body, when you want to change society, you know what? You're my enemy. You're my enemy. And the only way you're able to do it is because you're a billionaire. So then we need to take away your billions. Bill Gates, if he was working a job, 7 to 5, if he was going to work like everybody else, Bill Gates wouldn't be doing this stuff, would he?
No.
He's only doing this stuff because he's a billionaire. Take his billions away. Take it away. We need to do it in this country. There needs to be a populist movement in this country. Let's break up the tech companies. Let's take the billions. I want to take Bill Gates' billions and give it to the poor.
So already by this point, if you're a clear thinking, rational person, you should start to say, this is wacky right-wing stuff. It might be dressed up in left populist sounding rhetoric, but this is wacky stuff. Freedom for everyone until, and then he's off the rails. Anti-vax conspiracies, decrying left-wing morality that he claims is being imposed on him. He's already off the rails, but maybe some on the left might still be on board. But then Rick Wiles goes fully into anti-government, anti-tax rants. Take a look.
I want to give it to the poor. I want to strip them Completely strip them and give it to the poor. I want Jack Dorsey's money. I want Zuckerberg's money. I want to give it to the poor. I don't want to give it to the government. Oh my gosh, tax them and the government get it? No, give it to the poor. Let's take their money and give it to the poor. Let's bust up their corporations. This country would change overnight.
So now it's just standard right-wing thinking. In just a few minutes, he gets into the government sucks, don't tax anyone, let's depend on charity to help the poor exclusively, an old trope of the libertarian right. That's all this is. And yet it's another example of how populist sounding rhetoric can fool a lot of people until you get to the solutions they propose and the actions they take. This is the Tucker Carlson syndrome, we can call it. Random person who doesn't understand what Fox News is, doesn't understand Tucker Carlson's background and all that. They tune into Tucker's show and they hear Tucker ranting about corporations and elites doing bad things to the little guy. And we were told that we were going to have a reinvigoration of the working class and all this stuff. Wow, that sounds almost like Bernie. And then it gets to careful. Black Lives Matter might take your house. Brown people coming in from Mexico make the country dirtier. Literally a quote from Tucker Carlson. It's just another example of that sweet, sweet vocabulary of the populist rhetoric that tricks people. And then you get to the solutions they propose. And it's standard radical right-wing stuff. Yeah, monopolies are bad. Billionaires are bad. Help the poor. And then, whoa, what just happened here? So there's Rick Wiles calling what I call pulling what I call the old populist switcheroo and actually tricking some people even in my audience.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The David Pakman Show is audience-supported media, and you can contribute any amount you want on Patreon, as little as $1 per month. Plus, you can get the daily bonus show, world famous at this point, and the daily commercial-free TV show by making those pledges at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. This is audience-supported media. We depend on the support of our viewers and listeners. Whether you listen to the podcast, watch on YouTube, or watch us on TV, or even listen on the radio, patreon.com/David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
I didn't realize when I casually mentioned this Monday and did a segment about victimhood and cancel culture on Tuesday that this was going to continue blowing up to the degree that it has. We've already talked about the Dr. Seuss fiasco earlier on in the show, but now we have another Republican who has found another way to portray herself as the victim in a completely unhinged and ludicrous way. For the party of personal responsibility, the modern Republican Party seems to have no trouble whatsoever finding other people to blame for just about everything. I'm talking now about Trumpian QAnon Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who gave a speech yesterday in the House of Representatives where she claimed that when she has to wait in a line to go through a metal detector to get into the House chamber, that is a form of voter suppression. Now, you're probably anticipating more of an explanation from me about what she means. There's no more. This is what she said. Take a listen to her ranting and raving yesterday.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to H.R. 1. While we're talking about voter suppression and long lines, I'd like to point out that there's real voter suppression that happens right here in Congress. Many members of Congress have to stand in long lines to enter the chamber, going through metal detectors, emptying our pockets, and being treated very disrespectfully. So that is real voter suppression, and it's a shame that it happens right here on the House floor. Standing in line to vote is not voter suppression. It's just part of the voting process, just like people stand in line to buy groceries at the grocery store.
Long lines to go through a metal detector to go into the House chamber is a form of voter suppression. Voter suppression and protecting Congress from someone carrying a gun in the chamber are not the same thing. And in practice, the obvious question here would be, Marjorie, to even plausibly accept what you're saying, you would have to demonstrate that going through the metal detector has caused you or some of your colleagues to miss a vote in the House of Representatives. And of course, there's no evidence anybody has missed a vote thanks to having to wait a few minutes in line. Now, to be fair, she is one of the most ignorant people in Congress, so it wouldn't come as a huge shock that she may not understand the difference between voter suppression and standing in line 4 hours to vote and not even being sure if you'll be allowed because somebody might have purged you from the voter roll. There's that. And then there's her standing in line for a few minutes to get into the House of Representatives as one of the most privileged individuals in the United States, a member of one out of 435 members of the House, and having to just stand in line for a few minutes there. And then she introduces this idea of standing in line at the grocery store. And by the way, if voting is like going for groceries, you can now get groceries delivered. So why shouldn't you be able to get a ballot delivered, which she's against? But we'll skip that layer of hypocrisy for today because it's just another rabbit hole. One other thing, though, about groceries. If Marjorie Taylor Greene did have to stand in line for groceries for as long as some people have to stand in line to vote due to poll closures and understaffing of polling places, you can be damn sure that Marjorie Taylor Greene would be demanding congressional action immediately on grocery store lines. There's no question about it. It just hasn't affected her personally yet. Now, I guess the sort of real question here is Marjorie Taylor Greene pretending not to know the difference between these things and playing dumb for her ignorant followers, or does she really not know? I actually can't tell anymore with these people. She also said that standing in line at the House of Representatives is voter suppression, but standing in line to vote is not voter suppression. So like even the arguments she's making are internally conflicting. It's a complete and total mess. She's a confused individual, painfully so. And the crazy thing is her followers are even more confused. And they are the ones who fall for this stuff. And unless we make sure that we, again, focus in on Georgia in 2022, like we did in 2020, she may get herself reelected. There are concerns from Republicans that she may be facing a bloodbath. I would assume nothing. Trump, if he's able to raise money for that new PAC that he has, that new grift, and uses the money to support Marjorie Taylor Greene because she supports him, she may well be able to get herself reelected. And one of the main signals that I've been looking to, one of the bellwethers I will be looking to in 2022 to signal what the future of Trumpism may be, is whether the Trumpiest of Trumpian elected officials, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Madison Cawthorn, Lauren Boebert, and others, do they get reelected in 2022? If they do, and they may, it will signal that in all likelihood, Trumpism has much more staying power than many of us would like to believe. I've been since November 4th, November 3rd or 4th. Now, I don't even remember. Was the election November 3rd or November 4th? Since the early November presidential election, we have covered the goalpost moves from the right about when Trump is coming back to power. And we are now hours from the next milestone, and law enforcement is on alert over concerns that the QAnon Trumpian people may go nuts when Donald Trump obviously does not become president tomorrow. I'll tell you about that conspiracy theory in a moment. As a reminder, tell me if I'm missing anything, but initially the claim was Donald Trump won in early November, and we will know that when all the votes are counted. Increasingly, as it seemed that was not the case, the move was we are going to file lawsuits in some places to stop the count, in some places to keep counting, even though the ballots are all done being counted. There's no more ballots to count. And once that's done, Donald Trump will be announced as the next president of the United States. November 8th came and the media said, we've seen enough. Clearly, Joe Biden is the winner. At that point, the Trumpian move became sometime between now and December 14th, when the electors actually certify the state elections and vote their electoral votes, we will get these results overturned either through lawsuits or through sending a different slate of electors or whatever. And none of that happened. And on December 14th, Joe Biden got his 306 electoral votes. And then they said between December 14th and January 6th, the formal counting and acceptance of the electoral votes in a joint session of the House and Senate, sometime in that 3.5-week period, 3-week period, they are going to do something which will prevent Joe Biden from officially getting those votes on January 6th. And we know how that turned out. And then they were waiting for something to happen between January 6th and January 20th. And that didn't happen. So the new one is March 4th, which is tomorrow. There are segments of QAnon/Trump people who believe that tomorrow, March 4th, Donald Trump will become president again. Why? Because the presidential inauguration up until 1933 was on March 4th instead of January 20th. 1933, that was changed and Inauguration Day became January 20th. And the belief they have is that Donald Trump is going to make a defiant and triumphant return to the Oval Office tomorrow. Now, of course, it's not going to happen, but authorities and law enforcement are worried and will be on high alert for tomorrow because the chance of violence is non-zero. Now, they are saying it doesn't seem as though there's a major risk of violence tomorrow when Donald Trump obviously does not become president of the United States. Law enforcement saying they're not seeing large-scale physical mobilization that suggests there will be in-person events, that a lot of it is online. And for the time being, we are being told that law enforcement is on alert, but not expecting major violence or in-person elements. Capitol Police, of course, is monitoring it. Federal authorities are exercising caution, etc. There will be additional personnel deployed around the Capitol building. National Guard is going to continue supporting local officers in Washington, D.C. and members of Congress who are willing to accept that this is another conspiracy theory that's floating around are remaining vigilant, I guess, is what we are going to say. Is this the end? In all honesty, is this the end of these wild conspiracy theories that Donald Trump is going to take power back over? And in a sense, I think there will never be an end. And what I mean by that is as follows. When Trump doesn't become president tomorrow, they might move on to some new date. Joe Biden will never make it past June 1 or something like that. Eventually, the date will just become the 2024 election. That's my belief at this point in time. As these milestone dates come and go, much like with these end timers who they make a prediction and then the world doesn't end. And then they say, well, our protractor was not aligned properly and we miscalculated. It's actually going to be this other thing, this other thing, this other thing. Eventually, they'll just go to we are taking power back in November of 2024 when Donald Trump will win. So if you're expecting them to ever say it's really over, I doubt they're going to do that. I think it will just move to the 2024 election, and as an intermediate, probably even the 2022 election, where they will claim they're going to take control of the House and Senate, which they may, which is why it's important for us to be more focused on the midterms rather than on 2024 at this point in time. A little homework for you, if you're willing, if you're interested. Keep an eye out for what they say tomorrow when Trump doesn't become president. Send me examples of how they rationalize it or what they're saying. If you're on Parler, maybe you can find some interesting stuff there. Right-wing news websites, a coping MAGA Twitter, as it's called, subreddits. I'm curious, and maybe we'll make a segment out of it. We got so many positive voicemails about my interview yesterday with Michael Moss on how people become addicted to food, in a sense, and how a big food industry giants have a role to play in that. Here's a voicemail left on our voicemail number, 2192-DAVID-P. Of course, the show is playing in the background. That's almost a requisite for some of our favorite callers. No, but we love this caller, and he tells a very interesting story. Take a listen to this.
Excellent segment with the fellow from the New York Times, Mike, the nutritionist. Listen, I have the COPD. I've had it real bad where I had to go to the hospital. I couldn't breathe for an hour and a half on 3 different occasions.
Yeah.
I stopped eating regular, junk, like potato chips and ice cream. But recently, I've used just baked potatoes, oatmeal, fresh pineapple, and bananas.
Right.
I'm serious. And water and orange juice. That's it. And my breathing has improved dramatically, David. Dramatically. And what he's talking about, I still take 20 mils of methadone a day. But he's so right on, this guy.
Yeah. Listen, I heard from so many people, and, a lot of these industries, they profit from complexity. You need us to tell you what items should be on your list of things you can eat and things you can't eat. Or here's a bunch of super processed products that are either keto or vegan or whatever. And you look at the ingredient list and it's protein extracts and all of these different reformulations of elements of different food products. That's where all the profit comes from making things complicated and from recombining ingredients in a more profitable way. And of course, different folks have different food requirements and sensitivities and may have lifestyle choices around food that they want to make. But the best thing anybody can do is get off of the food products. Buy ingredients rather than food products. And obviously people's lives get in the way, and sometimes it's difficult to do this or that or to, home cook meals every day. But the point is, the simplest thing is, are sweet potatoes good or bad now? I mean, I'm not sure. Just go with the most unprocessed possible diet. And that's what we continue to learn. And yesterday's interview with Michael Moss, if you haven't seen it, check it out. Very, very much well reviewed by the David Pakman Show audience. And I'm glad to hear our friend, whose name I forget, but I recognize him with that might actually be a Providence accent. I don't know that it's a Boston accent. Good guy. Glad you're doing better. Glad the COPD is doing better. Okay. On the bonus show today, Twitter is backtracking after an outcry for the gender neutral term women with an X, WOMXN. I don't even know how it's supposed to be pronounced. I want to talk about this entire X thing, particularly when it comes to Latinx, which is something I don't subscribe to. And I have an interesting story to tell you guys about. When will the mask wearing safely stop? We're going to discuss that on the bonus show. And we're also going to talk about a way that Democrats, without killing the filibuster, could gut the filibuster. All right. All of those stories and more. I will be joined by producer Pat on today's bonus show. Sign up at joinpakman.com to get instant access. I will see you then. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. Nebbia is a revolutionary showerhead that saves you money by using 45% less water, but with a stream of water that's way more powerful than what you get with other showerheads. To get 15% off, go to nebbia.com/Pakman and use the code Pakman.